Everybody knows that, so. Boy, I have a nice picture of everybody. Wow. Look at that. Jim Zons, welcome, Jim. I see. We got, you're the only one. We see Bob Colson now, where everybody's getting on. Hello, Bob. See you all here. Paul Miller, I don't see your picture on here yet, but I see everybody else. You know,
You don't really want to see me.
wow, first time without your mask on, Paul. I hardly recognized you or Keith. Hi, Keith.
I echo Paul's sentiment. I try to stay off camera as much as possible.
The only committee member that's not here yet is Tom Quinn, and I have 4:45 on my clock. And so I will call the Community Resources and Tourism Committee meeting, March 8th, 4:45 to order. Our secretary call a roll call. I think we can see that everybody is here. I do not see yet Tom Quinn. And we have our county board chair back, which we're very pleased and happy about, Chairman Bartlett, who is also with us. And the other distinguished guests we will be hearing from later, and our extension people and our administrators. And thank you again to Krista for setting us up, and to our county clerk, Julie Wathke, for all the work she does for our committee. Thank you to both of you. You've read the minutes from our February meeting. Are there any questions, or I will entertain a motion to approve?
I move to approve, and I second that.
Let's see, who was moved? Ann, did you?
Yes, I did.
Ann moved, Ann Vogel to approve, and who was that, you, Jim?
Jim's on second.
Okay, you've heard motion and seconded. Any corrections, additions? If not, all in approve, say aye.
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 Any nays? Thank you. The last minutes are approved. Public input, I don't think we have any, do we? Julie or Krista? None. We'll move on. I've had a request, and I am going to honor it unless with no objections from anybody, to have a little change in our agenda so that some people can move on. And so what I'm going to do is call first on Catherine Emanuel, and right after her report, we're going to go right into item 7A to talk about the extension budget adjustment. Now, remember, we did approve that at our last meeting, but we will have an update. And then when Keith Stray, our CFO, is on here, I will call on him and we will move on. Are there any objections to moving that item up on the agenda? Thank you. Hearing none, then I'm going to move right into first Catherine, and we're going to call on you first for your director's report. One of the things, remember, in your last report was we have a budget carryover from extension. And remember, that was what we're going to be talking about immediately afterwards, so we can carry that to executive committee. Catherine, you're on.
Thanks so much, and good afternoon to everybody. Good to see you, and
I hope that even if you didn't get outside, you got to see outside because it's beautiful out there. I sat by a warm, sunny window, still with my electric blanket on, but it made it feel like it was even warmer in the house. So that was great. Good to see you all. I want to just give a couple updates, and I'm so glad that we're all here today, and we'll look forward to getting this information to Supervisor Quinn. I feel like I just want to just bust out of the gates with breaking news. Positive, happy breaking news. We had the hiring freeze lifted for the community development educator position. So that's official. We're excited about that. So Dunn County has budgeted for 0.33 FTE for that position. And Eau Claire is budgeted 0.34. And then Chippewa is in discussions for the 0.33. We'll say that. The county took a position in the last year's operating budget, or excuse me, for the 2021 budget, that they wouldn't be putting dollars towards vacant positions just on a across the board policy position due to all of the fiscal constraints. However, the county administrator and finance director and I worked out last year that when this position came open, we'd open up that discussion. We do have money in the extension budget in Chippewa County for this. So it's really now just working through and having a conversation with the county administrator there on his direction as we move forward. But regardless of Chippewa's position, Dunn County would still be getting the position that they have budgeted for. And I just want to say thank you for your patience. I know it has been a really boring repeating record just about every month of we're still on a hiring freeze, still on a hiring freeze. So not all positions in extension are on a thaw. So they really do value and look at this position as a priority. And I think it helps that I know that committee members were really eager and interested for this position to get filled. And so I think that does make a difference when our leadership makes these final decisions. So thinking about a time frame, when would we have this new person here? My ambitious goal would be that the person would start somewhere mid-July, early August. I think if we put together a comprehensive search and screen process, will take at least 3 months between finding out the news on Thursday that this information came forward to posting the position for about a month to make sure that we properly advertise nationally and locally and with an eye on people who have experience with diversity and inclusion. We want to make sure that we're having a very comprehensive applicant pool. And then looking at preliminary interviews, final interviews. And then by the time that happens, that will be probably end of May or so. And then depending on that person's employment status, they may need to give their current employer, 2, 3, sometimes 4 weeks notice of leaving. So again, I think we'd look to have that new person start mid-July, early August. Now, the position for Dunn County, it's just a little bit short of $14,000 for an annual contribution. So when that person starts, we'll definitely prorate that amount. So for the 2021 year, you'd be looking at about $6,000 investment for this position. So with that, I pause for any questions. Otherwise, I can move us through the other parts of the updates.
Yes, Catherine, I have a question. I remember when we hired Margaret, we had somebody from each county on the interview, and that was face-to-face. You expect this might have to be a virtual interview?
Yeah, great question. So far, we are planning on virtual. I think if we're in person, I don't know what the guidelines are going to be honest with you, because if we do it all in one day for a final interview, that's likely going to be a smaller room and likely easily with 3 finalists, if we don't have 4, you can easily spend 8 hours together in a room. And so I think virtual, depending on what our guidance is, virtual may be the way. However, if we can do face-to-face, I'm certainly open to that. I think it just kind of depends on all of the rolling guidance. I know CDC made some big announcements today of how do we interpret vaccinated versus non-vaccinated, and kind of how people move in communities. So we will be asking a member from CRTC to serve on that final search and screen committee, as well as at least one other county. So I'll be in touch with you when we're ready to start advancing to that. But first things first is getting that position posted. Supervisor Quinn, we can start your meeting with good news. The hiring freeze was lifted for that community development position. So we are good to go.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm really
Great.
excited.
Great.
Yeah, so thank you for your patience and your support. And just by the nature of how the meetings start, you are the first committee in our 3-county rotation to hear this news. So excited to share it with you all. And Supervisor Quinn, we're anticipating the person would be able to start in the new position after a comprehensive search and screen process, hopefully mid-July, early August. And then the county's investment is almost $14,000 annually. And so we would prorate that accordingly. So it'd be about 7,000, probably less than 7,000 for this fiscal year.
That's great news.
Thank you, Catherine, and welcome Supervisor Quinn. Yes, glad you're on here. Catherine, maybe we could move right into budget, and then we'll go to our own educators' reports here in Dunn County, as I requested at the beginning of the meeting. Would that be right with you, Catherine? I know last month, remember, we talked about that that program called Farmers Night Out, and I think that's what we're talking about. If you look at the minutes, which Julie sent out to us, we did approve it. But Catherine, and then Keith Stray is on right now, and our CFO. So let's go in right now to that extension 2021 budget adjustment.
Okay, sounds good. I can take the lead on that, Keith, if you're okay, and you can be my backup sidekick.
Sounds great.
Okay, thanks. And Supervisor Anderson, once we're done with this, I do have at least one more piece I want to touch base with the committee, but it's no problem to circle back to that. So this is a good spot to be at. So this is actually going to be a budget consideration for a different item, although you can kind of think of them as COVID-related decisions that are needing to be made. So what this item is doing is allowing us to increase the expense for operating expenses for Extensions Department's budget, specifically with 4-H program supplies. And the revenue will be covered by program participants. So I'll just start by saying that this is not asking for a change in levy dollars. This is asking for us to make a mechanism to collect basically funds or fees from participants to cover program supplies and to pay for them and to have it all under the public sunshine purview. So the reason why we're asking for this is because due to COVID-19, a lot of our programming for 4-H has changed significantly. You may recall that Louise has been doing an awesome job leading as best as she can with virtual programming and having like 4-H in a box or different activities in a box, in a bag, in a sack. And so those programs are costing money. And some of it we are able to cover with the regular educational programming fees, although we were never anticipating to be doing pretty much all virtual programming in 2021 when we were thinking about our budget. In our conversations for this budget year started mid 2020. So as we're continuing virtual programming, we very much want to go back to in-person programming. There likely would be some element of virtual programming for all of Extension and probably all of our lives. Like we're touched now forever by the virtual world. However, we do not have a funding mechanism to properly collect the participation fees for the members. So this would be supplies for projects, something that they might be doing a project on their own. Not everybody has virtual access, so there's other alternative ways for them to participate. And then would allow us to spend that money to buy those supplies. So this request is cost recovery only. There is no tax levy included, and we already have a cost center that we can house this in. Michelle or Keith, is there anything I may be missing?
No, I think you've covered it well. I mean, the bottom line boil down on this is it establishes the budgetary authority to raise fees for these purposes, which is new and beyond what the original budget included.
Catherine, thank you. Keith, I have a question of our CFO. I didn't hear it. Maybe you mentioned it. Is there a dollar amount that you mentioned?
Yes, in the resolution in the agenda packet,
I
there's
missed that.
$5,000 requested.
Okay.
Catherine and Michelle and I talked this out, and that's their estimate, budgetary estimate of what they anticipate being needed for this year.
I have one more question, and I don't want to hog it. I'll open up to the committee. Obviously, if we approve this now, it's too late to go to the executive meeting this Wednesday. However, Keith, I think our other resolution from last month for the Farmers Night Out will go before the executive committee this Wednesday. And then this request would go to the executive committee next month. Is that correct?
That is correct.
We
Yes,
should
the
still take action here today, right?
Absolutely. This moves it along in the
Any other
normal
committee
timeline.
members? Thank you, Keith. Questions of any committee? Well, that was straight up. I think it was very well explained, Catherine. Thank you. Understandable. Everybody's nodding their head. Are you ready for action so that we can pass this on at the April executive? The way it would go to the April executive committee for approval and then finally to the county board. Chairman Bartlett, are there any concerns or questions from you? Thank you. All right, I would entertain a motion to approve this budget adjustment.
So move.
Moved by
Supervisor Quinn.
Supervisor Quinn. Do I hear a second?
Second by Jim Zons.
Seconded by Supervisor Zons. It's been moved and seconded to approve this budget adjustment. We would call it what, the 4-H program supply? Would that be the proper name of it, Catherine?
I will tell you the proper name. Just
We
a
need,
minute.
is that the right name?
Yeah, it's going to be, let's see, Keith, I probably would take your help of what the county will call it, but we could call it the 4-H budget adjustment.
Whatever Julie has in the minutes, just so we're clear,
Yeah.
okay? Is that okay, Keith?
That's perfectly
Okay, all
fine.
in
The
favor?
resolution actually describes things in detail.
Well, very good. Anybody else before I call for a vote? If not, all in favor of approving this budget adjustment, say aye.
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 I heard ayes. Any nays? Thank you. The motion carries unanimous. Thank you all. Thank you, Catherine and Keith. Thank you. You're all set. So stay on as long as you can. We appreciate it. There's nothing more we need to do on that other budget adjustment from last month. So there are two from extension. One that will be coming up this Wednesday and one the following month. So again, Catherine and Keith, thank you very much. Moving on in the agenda then. It's time for the educators report, and look at that beautiful background, that greenhouse there, Stephanie.
Yeah, it kind of goes along with the weather today, a little warmer.
Okay. Well, maybe I should have called on Catherine to introduce you here then, but Catherine, is that okay? We'll call on Stephanie right now. Good to see you.
Well, hello. So if you have not met me before, my name is Stephanie Hintz. I'm the Human Development and Relationships Educator for Extension Dunn County. And I have all sorts of things that I have been doing. We can start with our parenting programming. So of course, as you guys know, or if you've been around, you know that we do Love and Logic, we do Parents Forever, and different parenting programs like that. But I have recently, over the last year, been trained in a program called Triple P. So that's Positive Parenting Program. You've probably read it in the highlights. It's an internationally recognized program. evidence-based, like very high efficacy. And so we just, and it took a while to get trained, and they have this whole process, but we did our first regional Triple P seminar this February. So we did 3 seminars, and we had like 90 people signed up. So that was so wonderful. There were not as many people who signed up attended, but the folks that were there, they really were there, and they just gave such positive feedback, and they were so happy. Many of them were foster parents and said that they wished that their foster organization would provide education in a way that was as clear and concise and helpful as the way that we did. So wonderful feedback there. And we are going to be holding more Triple P seminars in May. We have a series of 3 coming, and you'll see that on the calendar eventually. And then we also have, I'm looking at my calendar here, another round of 3 in August. And so we're hoping to do 4 rounds of 3 this year. And so we'll set the other dates as the year gets closer. So Triple P is in our community. This is something that organizations and nonprofits in Dunn County try to get because it has such high efficacy. It's such a well-known program. And so fortunately, Extension is able to bring it to our community. So that's just really exciting. Happy to report. I am doing a series of Love and Logic online. So during COVID-19, Love and Logic actually stopped. The creators didn't want anyone to do it online because they felt really strongly that it would be more beneficial in person, right? But like as the year went on and things kept getting pushed back, they finally said, yes, you can do it online. And they even created an online series for that. So we are going to officially host that next week, actually starting the 15th. And I just checked, we already have 16 people signed up. So that's really cool to see. Parents Forever, that's our mandatory co-parenting class here in Dunn County. I also provide this service for the surrounding counties that their HDRI, their Human Development and Relationships Educators, aren't providing that, or there's not other organizations that are providing it. So they essentially list us as an option. And so every now and then we'll get people from Chippewa or Pierce County join in on our Dunn County Parents Forever. And I would say it is absolutely one of my favorite programs that I'm running. I think it's definitely one of the more challenging ones because 1, it's a mandatory program, right? 2, divorce is listed as one of the top 5 most stressful experiences in your lifetime. And then compounding that with all the stressful realities connected to COVID-19, I've just been so happy to provide a class that was meaningful and helpful for parents during this last year. And so far we've been getting really good feedback from that class as well. That's held every single month. So it's ongoing. People can fit it into their schedules. We host one on Friday in the afternoons and Saturday in the mornings just to accommodate families as much as possible. And then every now and then there's just like weird situations where that doesn't work, and then I'm happy to work with them, right? So I just want to make sure that they get that information that we need because research has showed us that parents who take co-parenting education, especially programs with high efficacy like Parents Forever, I was showing you the workbook, then the children have higher levels of resilience when parents go through this. So that's why we're doing this, and that's why it's so important, and why I feel just so thrilled to report that it's been really successful from my perspective and from the evals. So shifting gears from parenting, I also do all sorts of mindfulness, like mental health, like taking care of you work, and that comes in multiple forms. But 2 programs that I want to touch base on is 1, our Learning to Breathe program. So I got trained in that last year, and we are really rolling it out all over the state. So I have a couple programs that are coming up. The very next one is going to be a collaboration with 4-H statewide. So it's going to be a 4-H Learning to Breathe program. It's 6 series. It's all about social emotional regulation. And it's about building up children's resiliency, right? And so I love that program. I was able to do a couple with a colleague in Manitowoc County, I believe. And the youth are so receptive to it, and they're so just resilient, wonderful little beings that it's so cool to provide this knowledge. Like, I wish I had this knowledge when I was their age. So it feels really inspiring to know that our youth all over the state are getting Learning to Breathe access. And then we developed a new curriculum. It's called We Cope. So we used to teach, and I guess we still would, we don't have to not, but formerly we would teach a curriculum called Taking Care of You, which is an awesome curriculum. We loved it. It wasn't our curriculum, right? And so we had to, if we wanted to change anything, it was a whole process and yada, yada, yada. But now Wisconsin has their own curriculum. So it's called We Cope. It's very similar to Taking Care of You. It's, I would say it's rounded out in different ways that we find are a little bit more helpful and that just make a little bit more sense. So we're super excited for that. I'm hosting the very first Wisconsin Taking Care of You March 10th. No, not Taking Care of You, We Cope. Oof, we got to remember that. It's We Cope on March 10th. So that is coming right up. It'll be a noon to 1 class, so over the lunch. We are, since it is co-pilot, I'm only going to have 15 people in there just to see how it works. And then as we feel more comfortable with the curriculum and we want to expand it, we could potentially start adding more and more people. Other things outside of programming, still definitely supporting the Health Done Right Coalition. It looked different than how we planned because of COVID, of course, but I'm just going to pop into the chat. I don't know if that's right, actually, but I'll pop into the chat, the Health Done Right org. I've shared this on our highlights before, so it's not new information, but I just love to keep drawing people's attention to this website and this resource. So we did get funding from the Community Foundation to create an online resource that would be like an all-encompassing, holistic resource for human services, environmental services, all areas of health in one spot, because that's something that our community doesn't have. It's not something that Dunn County is the only one that's suffering this, but because we have so many pockets of information all over the place, it could be really challenging for residents, community members to figure out like, how can they get help and where are they going to get these resources? And so Health Done Right has come up with the idea of creating a resource that will be presented to the community in twofold. The first one is going to be an online resource. We're even working with a website engineer to help us develop this search engine that will be specific to Dunn County. So amazing, so excited for that. Our funding got pushed back by 3 months. So we were intending on having this done by March, but I think we'll probably have it done early June, fingers crossed. And then we're also developing a paper copy. And so we're going to design it in a way that it folds up right in your pocket. And we have the funding to print those multiple series as we get updates over the next 2 years. So we're super excited about that. And we're going to partner with so many organizations and nonprofits in Dunn County to make sure that all the residents who need it have access to it. And then just another thing that happened this week, I was approached by the Dunn County Aging and Disability Resource Center to get assistance with their needs assessment because they were recommended by their higher ups to reach out to Extension. And so Lonnie was like, oh, I know Steph, I'll reach out to her. And what do you know, my background is actually in social research. So I was so happy to provide that consultation for her. And we were able to get that up and running. And so if you haven't taken the survey, please do, because it's wonderful to get everyone's feedback for our programming in the community. So I think that's good, and feel free to ask questions.
Wow, Stephanie, wow, thank you. Before I make my comments, which I have a lot of them, thank you. Let me hear from the committee. Any questions or comments or for Stephanie?
Good work.
Wow, yeah. Well, Stephanie, I'm so impressed with not only, your enthusiasm and in a newsletter, of course, which all of you, Michelle, you help print that, and every one of our local educators every month, we read that. So I can't comprehend everything, but I wrote down a few, and then we read your newsletter, and thank you for doing that every month, Stephanie. And I know that when I first read about your learning to breathe, that caught my attention. Learning to breathe. Wow. Clever. And was the other one We Cope, C-O-P-E? Is that what I got right?
Yeah.
Those are, along with everything else you said, very impressive, Stephanie. I can only say to you, and that just, it's awesome what you're doing. And from our whole committee, we commend you and our staff, proud of what you're doing. And keep it up. And we appreciate your excellent report today. And we stay on board by reading when you aren't on, because last week we heard from our horticulturalist, and each week, a month, as you know, we hear from a different one of you. But Michelle and Catherine are always on with us. So again, from all of us, Stephanie, thank you.
Looks like Dave might have a question.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I came up with a question. I actually looked at your website and then I couldn't find this page again for a while. How many people are participating in that Parents Forever?
Yeah, like monthly or so I have had 28 people since the start of this year, but I can get you the official numbers for last year, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
I was just curious how many people participate, take advantage of that.
Yeah, well, so they do have an option to do a self-paced online course. So I'm definitely not getting everyone who is divorcing in Dunn County, but I feel like I am getting a pretty significant chunk.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, Chairman Bartlett. Good question. Yes, I think you're reaching a lot of people in Dunn County that are really in need of these services. Anybody else? Thank you, Chairman Bartlett. Michelle, do you have any comments at this point? We always appreciate having you on, hearing what you do.
Nope, I was just hanging out today to, in case there was any questions on the budget. I think actually Catherine had one more thing that she wanted to discuss about the highlights that you keep mentioning, because there's a little bit of change to those highlights this month.
Thank you, Michelle. I will go back to Catherine before we go on with the agenda. Thank you, Michelle, for everything. Catherine, any closing, other comments you care to make?
I do. Thank you, Michelle. See, this is excellent colleague. She thinks ahead. I didn't even ask her or lobby her to make that pitch, but she was thinking it, and it is needed. So I know you all are good readers here, and so I won't go over everything in the highlights. I do want to just point out a couple things here. Every 2 years, the state does their budget, and you may hear in the press about some new agriculture positions for extension. I did park a couple highlights, or excuse me, links in the highlights for that. As extension professionals, we do not lobby or take a position on the state budget. Although it is often a question I get asked about of, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So I parked our campus resources about the budget in our highlights. I also have parked information about an unbiased vaccine webinar, and has lots of great information. I really appreciate learning because just about every question you can think of is being asked during some of these webinars, and this is all public information. And if you find in your role as a county board supervisor or just a citizen in the community and want to learn more, Extension is a great place to go to for information. So I have information there for you. Last is around our monthly highlights. So I don't know, maybe about 6 months ago or so, I shared that we are going to be taking part of a pilot program in the state where we're basically trying to cut down the amount of reporting that our educators have to do. Because in Dunn County, we do this monthly highlights, and then all educators report in a large portal called Recording Results. And when you were with Extension, you probably had some type of reporting portal you logged all of your information in. So what we're doing is we're trying to marry those pieces together of the impacts that we're making, and so that educators who are already writing up these statements don't have to rewrite it and then adding in information. So what you see this month, I think, is the first kind of a product of this kind in the state, and it's still in the pilot mode. So I want to just show you a few things that you'll be seeing that are a little bit different. And I think it's going to evolve a little bit, but I just want you to be aware. The first piece is kind of what we've been up to, just a large segment of some impacts. Now, sometimes extension work takes many months to plan. There's many pieces, and we're not always in a position to say, and here's the final result. So you may see the efforts in progress. So for example, there's planning for summer camps right now that 4-H is doing. We wouldn't just report to you in August, hey, we had X amount of youth participate in some type of summer camp. This is a multi-month project for Louisa to help lead. So you'll see things like that. We have some testimonials that are in here. We do have some upcoming events. So we're trying to put like a little calendar here. And then you see the updates that the educators are doing. So we're pulling out some of their impact statements they're putting in the system. And then every educator has the option to edit or amend if they want to make it a little more conversational. So I think that's kind of the big things for the format. So what I would ask for your feedback is, one, if there's anything formatting that stands out to you that you would want me to know of, this is rotten and you got to look at this, or it's fine, or, you know, whatever. I'd love to hear that feedback. And then the second piece is around the timing of the highlights. So without getting into all of the boring details, I think in order for our state reporting deadlines to work and for the monthly highlights to work, I think we're going to need to have about a month lag. So what I mean by that is right now we're giving you, it's March, we're giving you the February highlights. If we had the month lag, we would be giving you the January highlights. Now, I could go through the internal calendar if you want me to, but essentially we're off by a couple of days of when we get things done, finished on the state side of things. And by the time we need to get it to the county clerk to publish in the packet. So, and it could be 1 month off by 3 days, another month off by 7 days, just depending on how things work out. So I think what would alleviate stress for our staff is if we had your blessing and support to say, we'll still get you the monthly highlights. At some point though, we'll just have a month lag, and then that month lag would continue. But if we had that, and if you were in support of it, we could operate with that. You're still going to get all the same information, but again, it'd be about a month behind. But it would alleviate our educators having to do double reporting and keeping up with 2 different timelines and always being late, essentially, for CRTC. So formatting and timing.
Thank you, Catherine. Comments from the committee or questions of Catherine or any of our extension people? Well, you know me, Catherine, timing. You know, I don't think personally that has not been an issue. To me, I read your monthly reports, which are always good. We have a different educator coming on every time, and you're with us every month. And I don't know. You acted like there was a concern. I personally don't know why. Or did I miss something? I think I don't know how it could be any better. I appreciate. I think it's timely, personally. Am I getting your question or not, Catherine?
Thank you for the opportunity. It's timely now, but if we go to our new system, it would be about a month off. So if we were in our new system, let's say this month, which is March, I would be giving you the January highlights. You would still get the previous month's budget kind of overview that all committees are getting, and you would still have an educator reporting. It's just that I don't want to make this change without you being aware of it. And if you feel like it's a problem, then I would like to know about it, because we can work through that. But I think it keeps the most amount of sanity for the staff. If we can operate in our new model, it's going to be about a month behind, but you'd have all the same information.
All right. Thank you. I will think about it. I hope every committee member is ready to come back, and I think Catherine is inviting us for any input that we have regarding that. Is that right, Catherine?
Yes, that would be great. And we'll move forward with continuing in our pilot mode. You know, the ink has not dried, so to speak, but I think if you have concerns or you feel like this would be, I think you all are really understanding. And if there's a broader kind of county board dynamic or community dynamic where you feel like it would be problematic, it's good for me to know, and then I'll work with staff to kind of work backwards to remedy that.
Catherine, I think at our next month's meeting, Larry, I'll call on you right away. At our next month's meeting, and our committee has had a chance to think about this, if you'd bring that up again, and maybe, and meanwhile, I've had a chance to think more about it and every other committee member, and we can talk that up a little further. Supervisor Bjork, you had your hand up.
Well, I guess I don't understand the reporting process of it. A million years ago, when I was in extension, we had EMIS reports on different things. And that was always a headache and always late. But I think it's important for the county committee to hear from the extension staff what they're going to do in the future, what's coming up. This is the type of programming that we're looking at in the future. This is what we offer versus this is how things went a month ago, and it worked out. I mean, I want to keep the optimistic point of view where we're looking forward, and maybe I'm way off on that, but I mean, I don't really want month-old news. I want news about what's going to be happening next month.
Thank you, Supervisor Bjork. I agree with the old news. I want to know what's happening too, but I want both. And I want to know what they've done and also what they're doing. So I think we're on a page together there. Do anybody else care to hone in on this?
Maybe I can just share what our timeline is. It might help contextualize kind of the dilemma we have. In extension statewide, all county extension educators will have a choice of submitting information on the 20th of the month or the 27th. So even if we submit stuff on the 20th of the month, it's going to take at least 10 business days for the state to process it, which means that may be basically the first week of the next month, which sometimes when we need to get information to the county, it's the timing is off. And so if we move then to the 27th, it's a little bit cleaner for educators to think about, kind of end of the month. And if we have that month lag, then we can catch it. We would still be reporting on upcoming events, multi-month programming activities. That would still all be captured. It's just, you wouldn't have the what exactly happened last month until the following month. So that's the dilemma. Could our staff rise to the occasion? Totally. And if the committee felt like, yeah, we can live with that, knowing that they're trying to balance state reporting and county communications, then that would be helpful to us. But again, I know that the staff, none of us would want it to be a deal breaker for anybody. And so if it felt like it was going to be detrimental to the relationship, we would adjust. But if we went into it with your blessing, then I think everybody would breathe easier and keep going forward.
Thank you. Supervisor Quinn.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to the comments that Catherine just made. Also, but I also understand the committee members' concerns. But it seems to me like there are two things here. One is the reporting, which is the more sort of narrative about how things went, what happened, how much of it happened. And I think getting on a cycle that is 1 month later on that I don't see how that would be I don't see how we couldn't accommodate that if it really helped the staff gave them more time to get their work done and do a better job and that sort of thing, operate more efficiently. And as I understand it, it wouldn't change anything about, here's something new that we want to do and we'd like to ask your advice about it, or here's something, a question, a policy issue that we have that's come up, or a new program we'd like to consider. Those sorts of decisions and Catherine's general report would remain the same. Am I right about that? I see you shaking your head. So yes. Okay. So to me, I think it'd be okay. If others want to wait, that's fine. But I hear the staff saying that this would be very helpful. And I think we could accommodate that in our operations without hamstringing our understanding or our decision-making ability.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. Ann or Jim, you have a comment to hone in or? Okay,
I agree
yes,
with,
Supervisor Vogel.
yeah, I think I agree with Supervisor Quinn that what's happened, if it's a delay, that should be fine. Because it sounds like we will have what's coming up from the state reporting.
Okay, anybody else? Back, Jim's on. We haven't heard from you, or Supervisor Quinn has his hand up again. Yes, Supervisor Quinn.
Well, just maybe a follow-up request. And it seems like in this format, if there were things that came up that you think it, we really don't want to wait 2 months to report this to the committee, you could do that verbally in the meeting without having it in the written newsletter. Am I right about that?
Right.
Yes, we could always add in something supplemental. So for instance, the Dunn County, budget at a glance, that's always going to be there. That would not be a month behind. I could work with Michelle to add in just a supplemental narrative of, we didn't want to wait to share this, so here you go, type of thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good. Chairman Bartlett.
I agree with Supervisor Quinn and Vogel. The majority of what they're reporting on are programs that are ongoing. So to hear about it 1 month late in the reporting, I don't think that's going to be a big deal. Stuff, as they've pointed out, as Catherine's pointed out, if something timely has to be reported, they will do that.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Bartlett. Catherine, I think you've heard some comments from our supervisors. I hope that's helpful to you. All right, she's not.
Thank you very much.
Well, and thank you, and to all of our county extension educators, and for your reports all the time. And we look forward every month to your written and your verbal comments. So if there's no further questions, we will move on to our agenda. Thank you again. All right, moving on in the agenda. At our executive meeting last month, Bob Colson was asked to update the executive committee on the directional plan. And it occurred to me that when we went through that we hadn't really looked at it for a long time. In fact, the last time that we updated it was back in 2018. And a few of you were not on the board at that time. And it has changed supervisors. And listening to Bob Colson, my first comment was, Bob, will you come to the CR&T committee and kind of review and update us on this directional plan? Because it is important that we all know what's in that directional plan and that we have a plan. And so Bob agreed, so he's here today. So I'm going to turn it over to our county planner, Bob Colson, and it's all yours, Bob. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me? Because I was on
Yes.
mute before. Okay, thank you. Well, it's nice to be back at the committee. I haven't been with you folks for a very long time now. And so, and while, the directional plan is on the agenda, it's really going to speak to the reason that I've been attending your committee meetings for, gosh, years, a couple years at least. And that's broadband. And so, but before we get to that, I just want to back up and just, I'm going to share my screen with everybody.
Right.
And, all right, is the directional plan on view now?
Yes, it's up,
All right.
Bob. Thank you.
All right. So, if you have questions or comments, please just jump in. I can deal with them as they come up. But as Chairman Anderson said, well, the plan was adopted back in 2016 and it was amended back in 2018, and that's about the time that we were really getting pretty heavy into the broadband study. And I think the committee felt that broadband was important enough that maybe it needed to be brought to the front of the plan. And so the plan was amended and added initiative number 5, develop a broadband policy. And if I scroll down, you will see there were, at the time that this plan was adopted, there were 10 initiatives that were boiled down that the group felt was important, and it was ultimately adopted. This plan was adopted by the county board. I'm not going to read all 10 of those initiatives, but they're on the screen there. And broadband was one of them. And the question was, how can we encourage and promote broadband throughout the county? And for those that were around when this plan was adopted, we know, and when it was amended, we know that broadband and access to broadband is an issue that is important. We know through the study that there are large areas covered by broadband, but there's even larger areas that have no service. And so the committee felt that amending the plan to deal with broadband was important. So at the executive committee, I brought it to their attention that, what do we want to do with this plan? It's been a while since it's really been revised or reviewed or amended. And really, there's a lot of work that has been done that probably hasn't been accounted for through the planning process. And so it was agreed that the by those at executive that the plan is still relevant, and that each chair of a standing committee that's at executive agreed that their committee would take up broadband and with the effort of developing, where appropriate, the policy, so that if we go back to the front page, so these initiatives develop a broadband policy, and so there would be a policy, and as it moves up the triangle, that policy should be broad enough that it deals with quality of life issues, and supposedly improving quality of life. There's board engagement, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory what that is. Public engagement and the sustainability component. And sustainability would be not necessarily from the green viewpoint, but sustainability from the standpoint that we can continue this today and into the future. And then and that leads us up to the pinnacle of proactive government, which gets us one step closer to our vision to provide quality services that protect and empower our citizens in a cost-effective manner. So I'm here today to kind of spark or reinvigorate the committee about broadband, and I'm a resource, and I'm working with Paul Miller on this as resources to help committees develop a broadband policy. And and then the other thing that we want each committee to do is to review the 10 initiatives and say, well, this one doesn't apply anymore, or maybe we need a different initiative or another initiative, and to come up with something else, because this plan, eventually we will work through these 10 initiatives, and I'm guessing that there's more stuff out there that needs to be addressed. So it's kind of twofold. So the exercise or the committee's homework, as part of this discussion would be to review the plan, to come up with anything that you feel is not spoken to in the plan, and also to kind of laundry list or just jot down, the things that you have been doing with relation to developing broadband. And so what Mr. Miller and I will do is we will craft a broadband policy statement and present it at your next committee meeting for review and hopefully approval. And I would suggest that on your next agenda that the directional plan be placed as an action item, so that if the committee is ready, that you could act on it and adopt that plan, because we're hoping that at the upcoming executive committee meeting that this will be an item where we can talk about what committees have done and get things moving and move on. And so with that, I guess I know that Mr. Miller is present. Paul, is there anything that you think that I didn't talk about that I need to?
No, I think you covered it pretty well, Bob. Again, just to reiterate or reinforce what Bob said, what we're recommending to the committee at this time is that direct staff to go ahead and draft the policy and list the implementation strategies, either things that we've already done.
Thank you.
That's okay. Things that we've already done or things that we should be doing. So that what we ultimately will present next month to the CRT committee is a draft policy statement and implementation techniques list with an eye toward any changes that the committee may feel are necessary, any additions, deletions, corrections to what we prepare, and then ask that committee to forward that policy and implementation technique list to the executive board with a recommendation that it be incorporated into an updated version of the directional plan.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. With that, I'll turn it back over to Chairman Anderson, and if there's questions, comments from the committees, we'll try to answer them. And if we can't answer them today, we will get you an answer soon.
Thank you, Bob Colson and our county manager for that explanation. It's pretty exciting. That we will have on the April agenda, I assure you, and we look forward to the plan that you send us. Until then, I would open up for some discussion. This is very important, and I think we need to take as much time here today as is necessary. I will just, for the new people, or to remind you, as you can see on the bottom of this chart that Bob has in front of us, it first was adopted in March 16th of 2016, and then amended February 21st of 2018. Now, remember two big things I think that we have done, and we sent it to the county board. Those two things, if you don't need a reminder, but I will say on April 5th of 2019, Dunn County was named a telecommuter forward certified community. That was a big deal. We had to fill out all the information and send it down to the telecommuter office and waited a while. And when we got that certification, we were delighted. And then, of course, we moved. What that did was basically allowed our employees to access their work files online and from home and participate better in video chats, to accomplish a lot of chats more quickly than they could before. Now, not all, as we all know, of Dunn County has internet access. Then we look forward to how could we become broadband forward certified. Then we went through, with Bob Colson's great help, and able to apply so that we could become a broadband forward certified. By the way, when we became telecommuter forward, I think we were either the third or fourth county in the state to receive that designation. So we were very proud of that. And then on July 6th of 2020, last year, we were notified that Dunn County was indeed a broadband forward certified county. And what that meant was that all of the providers were able to get their license and all these things at a great reduced rate. it allowed them to look with all of these mosaics, West Central, Wisconsin Telecom, NetTech, all of these IPSs, to be able to get the infrastructure license and hopefully get more broadband throughout the county. Those were two big deals. I mentioned those are only two, but we started out way back when, and Bob Colson and so did Stephanie in our extension office worked greatly in giving us a lot of the initial. So we have done a lot of work, and but now we need to update it. And I wanted to give you that background to everybody, just so you know. Now, are there any questions of Bob or Paul at this point that any committee members would like to ask or update before we let them go to work and provide this at our next meeting for action next month, hopefully? I would ask Chairman Bartlett. Chairman Bartlett, do you see this as something then that we would take after our April meeting? Then we would bring it up to your executive committee, and then the same way as, and then it would go on after hearing from all the committees of the executive board. Is that your plan, Chairman Bartlett?
Yes, it would, after all the committees have weighed in and everything is been done at the committee level, it would end up at county board sometime in the future.
Thank you. Any committee members want to weigh in, questions or comments? Or are we clear what our direction is? We need to come up with a plan. Well, if not, thank you, Bob, for all of that update and instruction and the work you're doing, and to Paul. And we look forward to having you on an action agenda at our April meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I check out, I probably will be calling you and maybe having a conversation, Mr. Anderson, just to get everything squared in terms of some of the action items that's already taken place, so we can kind of laundry list those. So I will set up a time at a later date to have a conversation with you.
Thank you. I look forward to it. I will wait to hear from you, Bob.
All right. If there's nothing else from me, Mr. Chair, I'm going to stop sharing and leave the meeting.
You absolutely will understand.
Okay.
We don't have a lot left to do. Basically, I put on Dunn County Economic Development Corporation. Bob Bassani will not be reporting to us every month. I just put it on there letting you know that I said he did not need to report. And so we will not have a report. However, I will be updating you and then be bringing Bob Colson back on a periodic basis to update you on what's going on with Dunn County Economic Development. And on broadband, I will simply make a little report on that following what Bob Colson just said. I called Telecom and talked to Jim down there. I wanted to be able to report to you if there was any update on the grant applications that were sent way back in November to the state PSC office, and if they've heard anything. And nothing new. He told me we will be hearing in the middle of March. They have 4 grant applications in for Dunn County. My understanding is up in your area, Dave, that Mosaic has one in for part of that area, Northern Tiers of Dunn County, and Bloomer Telephone has one in for south of Colfax. And so there are others, and if these grants are approved, and we certainly hope that many of them are, that work will start this summer. Jim Cosa told me at Wisconsin Telecom, the minute they hear, they're ready to go. They will start applying fiber. And their direction is to go fiber. We hear a lot of things on other broadband that it doesn't only have to be fiber. It can be DSL, it can be, satellite, it can be wireless. And while that's true, there are some places that you can't afford to run a cable into. it's still important that all these towers, you have to have fiber to them for the power to get it done. So these providers that we have in Dunn County, and there's quite a few of them, but the real active ones are the three I mentioned right now. And so I will keep you in touch, and I try to stay in contact with all of these people. And so that as soon as we hear how many grants we got, remember, we send letters of support, and all the legislators have done so as well. So we contact every one of them. Rob Summerfield up in eastern part of Dunn County has been very active and strong for broadband. And at our legislative session that we had at the end of February, when you were all on board and heard our legislators talk a little bit about broadband at that time too. And we have a commitment. And in the governor's budget, remember, there were $200 million for rural broadband. And every one of our legislators told me personally they would support that. And we want to get our share of it here in Dunn County. So that's my update on broadband. Dunn County budget allocation for economic development. I'm going to ask you this, no action today, but remember we have $10,000 in our budget, and I got a nice letter from Supervisor Quinn regarding an idea how we should spend the money. I appreciate that, Supervisor Quinn. And I don't know how much time you want to take today. It's approaching 6 o'clock, but I want all of you to think about this because Supervisor Quinn, if it's all right with you, I will ask you, and we'll share your regarding housing in Dunn County, the need for it. And this is an important item. And Chairman Bartlett, are we able to delay this until as late as May? Or can you nod your head and say, before we send a recommendation to you?
Well, I guess you can
recommend where
delay
we
it
spend
as
that
long as you
$10,000.
want. If you're talking about spending that $10,000, you can delay it as long as you want. It doesn't have to be spent, but it's in the budget to be spent
Right.
on something that's for economic development.
Correct.
And so I think this housing study falls in that category, and it's something that a lot of surveys taken in Dunn County have pointed to that we need. And Tom knows a lot more about this than I do, but so I guess I'd like to hear his comments.
Yes, thank you. I agree. We do need to hear that. And I think I want to hear from every supervisor so we don't just say this is one project and we're going to zero in. But Tom, can you briefly update everybody on what you sent to me regarding rural housing?
Yeah, yes. Thanks, Jim. And so I think I sent that to every committee member. And if you look at that, it sort of outlines the general idea. I really suggest that people follow the link to the Barron County Economic Development website and look at what their study entails, because it's pretty comprehensive assessment of what's needed, what the resources are, and it looks at the whole county, not just Barron or Rice Lake, for example. So I think it makes a lot of sense. That is pretty self-explanatory. I think the process will work kind of like, I think I outlined it a little bit in the letter, but we don't have to act on this right now, but I think we might want to consider being prepared to act on it at our next meeting. There will be an effort to identify additional partners in Dunn County, an effort to sort of firm up the commitment from the Community Foundation, see if that $10,000 can be actually committed. I'm pretty sure it will be. And then an effort to work with regional plan and other partners, and then an effort to work with regional planning to identify, to apply for funding. And that may take a while. So, but the application for funding would benefit from having some commitments from for partner funding at the local level. So I think if we could do that, not this month, but next month maybe, that would be helpful. If we can't, then it'll just delay the process. But, and I think maybe Chairman Bartlett, sometime later in this month, Diane and I could have a conversation with you about this and sort of see how you want to go ahead with it as far as getting other partners on board.
That's fine. I looked at that letter you had, so, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Supervisor Quinn, thank you. Just remember, we have two supervisors on the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Board, Supervisor Diane Morehouse and Supervisor Tom Quinn. So Tom, you would be a good one to help us and work with that. Yes, Tom, but I don't want to forget the rest of you. I know Tom, Jim Zons and I have discussed way back when a few ideas about this. So I would ask each one of you to kind of do the same thing as Tom Quinn did. If you have a particular project that you or projects you think we should consider, would you also email to all of the committee members and include Chairman Bartlett a proposal kind of like Tom Quinn did, and then having gotten that, we will be able to make a discussion and I will put it on our April agenda for possible action. And if we aren't ready, we'll table it, but we can certainly discuss it. And if you're ready, we'll take action. If you aren't ready, we'll table it. Fair enough?
I've got, if you want, I've got something that I can submit to the committee members now. And if there's some interest for it, I will flesh out the idea a little bit more. But I did want to, because I knew this was on the agenda, I wanted to at least kind of bring up an idea that I've been thinking about the last month and see if there's any interest from the committee on going ahead and kind of coming up with a formal proposal for moving forward, like just kind of like Tom's working on right now with the housing study.
Yes, Chairman Zons, give it to us right now. Let's hear it.
So one of the things that this committee is tasked with and often gets the short end of the stick is the tourism aspect of this committee. And that's also one of the functions, or has been mentioned as a function of the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation for as being a way to kind of attract business to the area. And I'll just so that since I'm talking, I'll go ahead and put my camera on. So one of the things that I thought about, because pretty much most of the tourism and related things, like for example, right now there's the Visit Menominee website, which is very Menominee focused and very tourism focused. But what about having something that's a Visit Dunn County site that has both a tourism focus with county related tourism stuff and also information from an economic development perspective. I've talked with a local web development company that I've worked with on different things in the past to kind of come up with some costs and how this could be done in a way so that as a committee and Dunn County wouldn't, at least at first, have to really have much to do with this site except for to kind of oversee it on a monthly basis as far as, you know, what's being put out there and what kind of traffic it's getting, but to have that county-wide focus as opposed to just being Menominee centric. Menominee, of course, would be part of this, but also you'd have, you know, Colfax and Wheeler and Ridgeland and Rock Falls and all these different parts of the county that maybe don't get as much attention as Menominee proper does. This could be done well within that a portion of that budget. It wouldn't have to all be used towards that. And there even could be potentially some, not necessarily revenue generating, but it could be in that there could be advertising sold for it. It could have its own self-sufficiency set up for it. So I've had quite a few long discussions about this and thought, well, it would be, it could be accomplished, it could be pulled off, and it could be another tool in the box, so to speak, kind of like an economic development and tourism aspect of Dunn County on a little bit of an autopilot, because it would be a site that could be doing the work that as people search for stuff. That's the idea.
Jim, I appreciate that. I remember you and I talked about this some time ago, didn't we, on one of our committee meetings, and we've talked about it a few different times. So I thank you for bringing that up today. And I am reminded, you know, that Ashley DeMuth of our Area Chamber of Commerce is online. And I know that you did mention too that we could work very closely with our tourism people at the Chamber of Commerce, not only in Menominee, but like these other communities of whether they're not Chamber of Commerces or they're commercial club or whatever they are with all of these rural communities. And Jim, thank you. I like that idea. So you've heard two of these proposals to our committee. Right now, we're going to discuss both of these next month, clear and more. And all of you, if you come up with something else, unless right now you have a little idea you want to share with everybody. Anybody raise their hand? Oh, yeah, Supervisor Bjork, go ahead.
Well, I appreciate Tom Quinton's proposal, and it seemed like that's an ongoing thing by many different organizations as far as housing and lack of housing and what government should do about it. But I thought this whole centerpiece and asking for $10,000 was for development, more economic development and tourism. So it seems to me we asked for the money for one thing, and now there's talk about spending it someplace else. And I don't think that should be the case.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Bjork. Supervisor Vaught, Ann, go ahead.
I think at the last meeting, did we talk about some kind of business directory? I don't know if that would fit into the website and economic development. So getting a handle on what.
Yeah, it's kind of when I was having these informal discussions with the web developer, I thought that in addition to having, you know, the some of the tourism related stuff, that an important component on it, especially as far as economic development and also just for business promotion and retention in the area, would be at least, you know, a business directory that would be that would have local businesses on it, that they wouldn't have to be members of any organization. They would just be featured on it because they happen to do business in Dunn County. And there would be a way for them to, if they're not included on it, they would be able to submit their information and a photo and that type of thing. So again, my thought is something that it would marry tourism and economic development, or I should say tourism and business, I guess, in a way to be kind of an extra vehicle for helping attract stuff to Dunn County, people and business.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. And Ann, good question. We did talk about that last month a little bit. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, everybody. As I indicated, we've gotten kind of to the end of our agenda. Next month, then, we will have some action items, and I will ask you, Tom McGuinn, to go through this a little more thoroughly, and Jim and Ann and Larry, anybody, update, and certainly to you, Chairman Bartlett. And so moving on right now, our next meeting is April 12th, and I only have one short announcement. Then I'll ask if anybody else any. As chairman of the CR&T committee, I'm also chairman of the libraries committee. Last year, I want you to know that I was never able to hold a library meeting with the head librarians in all of our cities, Boyceville, Sand Creek, Colfax, Menominee, and Elk Mountain has a branch of Menominee. We weren't able to do it in person, and obviously, nor were they able to come before the county board. And so I'm hoping when that opens up, I will be asking Chairman Bartlett if he can bring in, and so we can have a report from our county libraries. What I want you to remember is that I have asked Ted Starks here in Menominee as the head librarian, if he would sponsor a Zoom for us so I can meet with the librarians within a month or two and have a meeting. And remember, we have supported them at 100% in the past. That will come before our committee again for your recommendation as well how you want to support libraries before budget time. And I only bring it up to you right now because I will be talking, and they ask me and I say, I don't know until our committee meets. That's my announcement. Anybody else have any announcements for the good of everybody? If not, welcome back, Chairman Bartlett. It's so good to have you attend our meetings. You're looking good and healthy. And so we'll be talking to you again already Wednesday when we have our executive meeting. And to the rest of you, stay healthy. Thank you. And very good. And to extension staff. And again, thank you to Krista and to Julie. If there's no more business, this meeting is adjourned.
Bye all.